The Long Beach Arena held 4,200 seats on the night of October 14, 1979, and by 7:45 in the evening, every one of them was taken. The overhead lights threw a flat yellowish wash across the floor of the competition area, and the air carried the particular smell of canvas and floor wax and the slow heat of a crowd that had been sitting for nearly 3 hours. Outside on Seaside Way, traffic moved without hurry. A food vendor was packing up his cart. A woman walked a dog past the entrance without looking up. None of it knew what was about to happen inside. His name was Daniel Reeves, 23 years old, 6 feet 2 inches tall, 194 pounds with nothing to spare. He had won the National Collegiate Karate Championship in 1977, and again in 1978 back-to-back, without a single loss in the open weight division across either year. His sensei had trained under Masoyama in Japan for 4 years. His record in open tournament competition stood at 31 wins and 2 draws. The draws both disputed on points by the judges of the opposing team. Never by his own hand. He had been featured on the cover of Black Belt magazine in the spring of that year, standing with his arms crossed and his chin level, the headline reading, "The next generation is already here." He was not a fraud. He was not an amateur. He was, by every honest measurement that mattered in that room, the most decorated young competitor in American karate in 1979. His only flaw was that he knew it. In the next 41 seconds, 3 of those 4,200 people would stop breathing. Nobody in that arena knew they were about to witness the most complete lesson in the history of the Long Beach tournament circuit, and the man who was about to teach it was sitting in the 4th row, in a plain white undershirt, a denim jacket folded across his knee, wearing a pair of worn canvas street shoes, and he had not told a single person in that building who he was. He had arrived at 6:15, bought a ticket at the window like everyone else, and found a seat on the aisle between a journalist from a regional sports paper and a retired judo competitor named Henry Kowalski, who had medaled at the 1964 Tokyo Games. Neither man recognized him at first. The journalist had his notepad open. Kowalski had a paper cup of bad coffee balanced on his knee. They sat in the comfortable anonymity of people who are there to watch someone else perform, and the man in the denim jacket was content to be part of that arrangement. The early rounds of the evening had produced good karate. 3 bouts, 2 of them close, 1 of them not. Reeves had fought in the second bout and had disposed of his opponent in 50 seconds with a combination so technically clean that Kowalski had leaned toward the journalist and said, quietly, that the young man had real hands. The journalist had written it down. The evening's bracket moved forward. An MC with a microphone walked the edge of the competition floor and spoke the names of upcoming competitors into a PA system that echoed faintly off the back wall. The crowd settled into the particular patience of people who have already seen enough to want more. Reeves sat on the edge of a folding chair near the competitor's staging area and accepted congratulations from 3 people in turn. He shook each hand briefly. He looked at the floor of the arena the way a man looks at something he has already decided belongs to him. There was a kind of stillness in it, but it was not the stillness of humility. It was the stillness of a man who has been told so many times that he is the best that he has begun to use the word as a load-bearing wall in the architecture of who he is. One of the 3 people who had come to congratulate him was his training partner, a man named Greg Torrance, who was also 23 and who had finished 3rd in the same national championship 2 years running. Torrance leaned down and said something in Reeves's ear, and Reeves nodded without looking up. Whatever Torrance said, Reeves filed it in the same place he filed everything that evening, in the category of information that confirmed what he already believed. At 8:42, the MC took the microphone again and said that the evening's exhibition portion was about to begin, and that a special guest had agreed, at the last moment, to offer a brief demonstration for the audience. He said the guest's name. The arena did not react all at once. It never does. Recognition traveled through a crowd the way a current moves across water. First the people closest to the source feel it, and then it spreads, row by row, until what began as a murmur in the 3rd row becomes something that sounds like weather. 4,200 people came to their feet. In the 4th row, the journalist from the regional paper put down his notepad. Henry Kowalski set his coffee cup on the concrete floor with a careful, deliberate sound, as if he were setting down something fragile. He turned to look at the man in the denim jacket and did not say anything, because there was nothing adequate to say. If you have been watching this channel for any length of time, you understand what it means when a man of that caliber agrees to appear at an event without announcement, without a publicist, without a green room, without anything except a general admission ticket and the desire to watch good karate. It means the event earned his presence by its quality, and that he chose to be anonymous until someone else made the choice for him. Before we get to what happened next, if this kind of story is what brought you here tonight, make sure you are subscribed, and drop a comment below telling us where in the world you are watching from. The story is just beginning, and you will not want to miss the next 41 seconds. Daniel Reeves heard the name from his folding chair by the staging area. He stood up. He walked toward the competition floor at the particular pace of a young man who has decided that a moment requires his participation. Torrance put a hand on his arm and said something. Reeves moved the arm away, gently, the way you move something that is in your path but does not belong there. He took the microphone from the MC. The arena, which had been climbing toward an even louder response, went quiet the way a room goes quiet when something unexpected steps into the space where something expected was supposed to be. Not silence, the particular silence of 4,000 people holding what they were about to say. Reeves looked toward the fourth row. He spoke into the microphone clearly, at a volume calibrated for an arena, and what he said became the event's only headline. He said, "You're finished, old man. I know who you are, and if you want to show these people something, come down here and show me first." The journalist picked his notepad back up. His pen did not move. Kowalski watched the fourth row. The tournament director, a man named Frank Saito, who had been running the Long Beach circuit for 11 years, placed both hands flat on the scoring table with the deliberate steadiness of a man who is preparing himself for whatever comes next and wants to make sure he is still seated when it does. In the fourth row, the man in the denim jacket did not respond immediately. He looked at the competition floor. He looked at the young man holding the microphone. He reached down and picked up the denim jacket that had been across his knee and folded it once, lengthwise, deliberately, and set it on the seat beside him. He removed the cap he was wearing and set it on top of the jacket. He smoothed the front of his white undershirt with one hand and stood up. He has already lost. He just does not know it yet. He walked to the aisle and moved toward the floor without hurry, the way a man walks toward a task he has performed enough times that the performing of it is no longer interesting. He was 39 years old. He was 5 feet 10 inches tall. He weighed 176 pounds in street shoes. He had fought in more than 168 professional and tournament bouts across a decade and a half of competitive martial arts. He had defeated every serious challenger who had appeared in front of him, and he had done it, in most cases, without raising his voice. He did not stretch when he reached the floor. He did not roll his shoulders. He did not assume a stance immediately. He stood with his hands at his sides and looked at Reeves with the expression of a man who has been handed a mathematical problem he has already solved in his head. Reeves looked back at him. Up close, the height difference was 4 inches. The age difference was 16 years. The weight difference was 18 pounds. All of it in the younger man's favor. Any objective observer with a pad and pencil and no further context would have written those numbers down and drawn a particular conclusion. Frank Saito at the scoring table would later say that what happened in the next minute and 12 seconds was the most complete technical demonstration he had witnessed in 11 years of managing tournament competition. He did not say it that night. He said it 3 years later, at a dinner in Pasadena, to a room of 40 people that included 2 world champions and the journalist who had been sitting next to Kowalski in the fourth row. The story does not die, it travels. That is what stories of this particular kind do. Reeves moved first. There is a principle in serious martial arts competition that experienced practitioners understand and novices feel only after it is too late. A fight is not 2 men hitting each other. A fight is a negotiation about distance. Every technique in the arsenal of a trained fighter is, at its core, a statement about where the fighter intends to stand relative to his opponent. And every defensive response is a counter-argument about where that standing will actually occur. The man who controls the distance controls the conversation. The man who controls the conversation determines when it ends. Reeves understood this at the level of conscious technique. He had been trained in it, had drilled it, had applied it in 31 tournament wins. What he had not yet encountered was a man who understood it at the level below consciousness, at the level where the body has recorded so many repetitions of the principle that the thinking mind is no longer required to enforce it. Second one. Reeves closed the distance with a jab cross combination, both hands fast. The technique clean enough that 3 people in the first row involuntarily pulled back in their seats. The left jab arrived first, at the speed of a man who uses that hand approximately 400 times every week in training. The right cross followed at the interval of a practiced combination, not a half beat behind, not a full beat. Neither hand found anything. Not blocked, not parried, not deflected with a forearm or an open palm. The space where the target had been was simply no longer occupied by a target. The adjustment was 6 inches, lateral, unhurried, the kind of movement that registers in the visual cortex of an observer as something between a lean and a step. Too small to look intentional and too precise to be anything else. Kowalski in the 4th row did not move. He was watching the feet. Second 2. Reeves reset. A man with his training does not waste time processing what did not land. He processes what the miss tells him and adjusts. He stepped inside with a knee strike. The lead knee driving toward the midsection at a height and angle calibrated to the specific gap between 2 men of their relative builds. It was a good technique. It was the correct technique for the distance and the moment. The knee found air. The man in the white undershirt was no longer at the distance where the technique was designed to arrive. He had moved back by precisely the margin required, not more, with the particular economy of a man who does not waste energy on exits that are larger than the entry demands. The tournament director's hands were still flat on the scoring table. He had not moved them. Second 3. Reeves threw the spinning back kick. It was his signature technique. The move that had closed 11 of his 31 tournament wins. The technique his sensei had spent 2 years drilling into him at a frequency and attention that made it, by any reasonable standard, the cleanest single strike in his arsenal. He had landed it on men larger than him and faster than him, and men with more experience. And he had landed it in tournament conditions under the eyes of judges and witnesses and cameras. The rotation was tight. The chambering was correct. The targeting was the floating rib on the left side, a choice that reflects a very specific understanding of human anatomy and the particular vulnerabilities of a frame of the dimensions he was addressing. He did not land it.
He did not come close to landing it. What happened instead is what happened, and it happened so quickly that the 4,200 people in the Long Beach arena processed it in 3 separate stages across approximately 8 seconds of collective comprehension. The first stage was the technique itself. The second stage was the response.
The third stage was the understanding of what the response meant. When the spinning back kick completed its rotation and found nothing, the momentum of the technique carried Reeves a half step past the position he had intended to occupy. It was not a stumble. It was the natural physics of a powerful rotational technique that does not meet resistance at the expected point of contact. The half step was small. In other circumstances against another opponent in another configuration of the fight, it would have been corrected and the exchange would have continued. These were not other circumstances. The response arrived before the half step was resolved. It was a single movement, not a combination, not a sequence, not a series of techniques designed to accumulate damage. One movement, a right hand, thrown from a distance of approximately 18 inches, aimed at the left side of Reeves's jaw, traveling at the speed of a man who has thrown that particular technique from that particular distance on perhaps 10,000 separate occasions across 15 years of practice. And who knows, with the precision of long experience, exactly how far short of the intended target to stop. It stopped 1 inch from the jaw of Daniel Reeves. It held there for a moment that lasted, by the count of multiple witnesses, somewhere between 2 and 4 seconds. The fist occupied the space adjacent to the side of Reeves's face, without touching it. Held in place by the same economy that had governed every other movement of the preceding 41 seconds. Frank Saito at the scoring table released a breath. The journalist in the fourth row had still not written anything. Kowalski, who had medaled at the 1964 Tokyo Games and who had spent the previous 41 seconds watching the feet of both men, turned to look at the floor. He picked up his coffee cup, he set it back down. The hand withdrew. The man in the white undershirt took one step back. He stood with his hands at his sides, in the same position he had occupied when he first arrived on the floor. He looked at Reeves. Reeves was standing in the place where the fight had ended. He was not injured. He had not been touched. He was standing in the position a man occupies when he has been shown something, and the showing of it has rearranged the architecture of what he believed. The jaw was intact. The technique that had arrived 1 inch from it had done its work without contact, because contact was not the point. The arena made a sound that is difficult to describe to someone who was not present to hear it. It was not applause, not immediately. Applause requires the processing of an event that has already happened. This sound came before the processing. It was the sound of 4,200 people arriving simultaneously at the understanding of what they had just seen. The man in the white undershirt walked toward Reeves. He walked without ceremony. He extended his right hand. What he said was not heard by the arena. It was said at the volume of a private conversation, directed at Reeves and no one else, and the arena's noise had already risen to a level that buried it entirely. It was 2 sentences. The people closest to the floor would later report 2 or 3 different versions of those 2 sentences. Because that is what happens when people try to recall the precise language of a moment they experienced primarily as feeling rather than text. The versions share a structure. They are consistent in their character. They differ in their specific words in the way that oral history always differs. In the particular terms, not in the substance. What they agree on is this. 1 sentence was about the young man's technique. The second sentence was about his future. Reeves stood at the place where 2 roads diverge, and the road he chose would determine not only how this story ended but how it would be told for the next 4 decades. He looked at the extended hand. He looked at the man who had extended it. The calculation that moved behind his eyes in that moment was visible to the people close enough to see his face, though not legible in its specifics. It lasted approximately 3 seconds. He took the hand. He shook it once. He nodded. He said 1 word, at a volume audible only to the man in front of him, and then he stepped back and turned to face the arena. Whatever the word was, the man who received it did not tell it. Not that night, not in the years that followed. The arena, by this point, had made its decision. The sound it produced was the kind that large structures are built to contain, and that nevertheless seems to press against the walls. The journalist from the regional paper was writing. Frank Saito had taken his hands off the scoring table. Kowalski was standing, the way people stand when they are applauding something that requires the full use of the body. The man in the white undershirt did not acknowledge the arena. He turned and walked back toward the 4th row. He collected the denim jacket from the seat beside his. He picked up the cap and put it on. He sat back down, in the same seat, at the same angle, with the jacket back across his knee. A woman in the 3rd row reached forward and put her hand briefly on his shoulder. The way people touch something they need to confirm is real. He did not look up. In the weeks that followed, the story left Long Beach and went where stories of that kind go, into the particular circuit of gyms and dojos and tournament circuits, and back rooms where people who practice martial arts exchange what they know. It arrived in each new place carrying the essential facts and shedding, in transit, some of the details. In some versions, the crowd was larger. In some versions, the fight lasted longer. In one version, which reached a dojo in Portland 3 months after the event, there was no microphone, and Reeves had issued his challenge in a parking lot. Oral history does this. It is not dishonesty. It is the natural process by which a story that contains something true is reshaped by each telling to emphasize the truth more completely. The facts that survived every version of the story, intact without mutation, were 3. That a young champion had issued the challenge publicly, that the fight had lasted less than a minute, that the hand had been extended at the end, and that the young man had taken it. Henry Kowalski told the story for the first time at a judo clinic in Chicago in February of 1980. He told it the way a man tells a story he does not expect to stop telling, with the particular care of someone who understands that the details are load-bearing. He said he had been watching the feet. He said that watching the feet told him everything he needed to know in the first 2 seconds. He said the rest of it was a confirmation of what the feet had already decided. Frank Saito told it at the Pasadena dinner in 1982, and again at a tournament administrators conference in 1986. Each time he said the same thing, that 11 years of running competition had not produced an equivalent 41 seconds. The journalist published a version in the regional paper 2 weeks after the event. It ran in the sports section, below the fold, beside a photograph of the competition floor taken from the mezzanine level. The headline was 14 words. The article was 640 words. It was the most read piece the paper published that quarter. Daniel Reeves continued competing. He did not win the national championship in 1980, though he competed in it. He placed third. In subsequent years, he moved into coaching, and the students he produced were consistently among the most technically correct fighters of their generation. People who trained under him in the 80s noted that he was unusually attentive to the concept of distance, that he could speak about it for long periods without exhausting the subject, that he framed it not as a technique, but as a philosophy. His students did not always know why he knew what he knew about distance, or where the knowing had come from. He did not tell the story. Not in any version that found its way into the circuit. He may have told it privately. He may have carried it the way some people carry the most important things they know, without distributing them, without needing the weight of them publicly acknowledged. There is a particular kind of knowledge that can only be delivered by direct experience, and it cannot be paraphrased without losing the part that matters. A man can read about distance. A man can be told about distance by someone who has spent a lifetime understanding it. But the understanding that arrives in the body, in the specific moment when the fist stops 1 inch from the jaw and holds there, is a different order of information entirely. It is the kind that does not require revision. What happened in the Long Beach Arena on the night of October 14, 1979, was not, at its root, a competition. It was a demonstration. The distinction matters because competitions are about outcomes, demonstrations are about understanding. The outcome in this case was identical to what a competition would have produced, but the method by which it arrived was something else. Nothing was broken. Nothing required repair. A young man of genuine ability had been shown, in the most direct language available, the difference between what he believed he could do and what had actually been possible in that room on that night. He had accepted the correction. That choice, the taking of the hand, the single word, the step back, is the part of the story that the oral history preserved most faithfully across 4 decades and every mutation of the specific details. Because it is the part that contains the real instruction. A man's ability can be measured. His record can be quantified, his technique can be analyzed and scored and compared against a standard. But the thing that determines what a man does with the information that arrives when his best effort finds nothing, is not a technique. It is something built earlier and tested less frequently. And when it is tested in front of 4,200 people under lights in an arena, the result is visible to everyone in the building and legible to anyone who knows how to read it. Reeves read it correctly. That is the other half of the story. The half that does not always make the headline. The world that night continued without interruption. Traffic moved on Seaside Way. The food vendor had finished packing his cart. The woman with the dog had long since gone. The light outside the arena was the same light it had been at 7:45, falling on the same pavement, indifferent to what had happened inside. What you carry out of a room like that is yours alone. No one else can quantify it. No one else can carry it for you. The denim jacket was folded once and set on the seat, and then it was picked up again, and the man who had set it down walked back into the ordinary world with everything he had brought in, and nothing he had not. Next week, we will tell the story of the afternoon in 1976 when a Hollywood stunt coordinator with a professional boxing background decided, in front of a film crew of 38 people, that a rehearsal was the right moment to find out whether the reputation was real. The answer arrived in 19 seconds.